working drummer.
Now kick it.
This is the Working Drummer Podcast, serving up perspectives, experiences, and stories from ground-level working pros. Advice, tips, and secrets on how to build a career in the music business.
Hey everyone, this is Matthew Crouse, and you are listening to the podcast Working Drummer. Today, my guest is drummer Hubert Payne. For almost 2 years, Hubert has been the drummer for a highly respectable country music act, Little Big Town. Little Big Town has always surrounded themselves with the best musicians, and Hubert is the perfect example of that tradition. 2016 has been a big year for him that includes recording the new record with Little Big Town as well as with Pharrell Williams. Also, we talk about a crazy thing that happened to Hubert back in 2010 where he was stabbed in a nightclub and how he chose to react to that life-changing event, as well as so much more. We all love vintage gear, and I bet you know someone that owns an old Les Paul or maybe a 56 Fender Strat that never leaves the home, and the question is, why do we love this gear? It looks cool, it gives you that warm, handcrafted tone, and often brings a unique vibe to the music. Of course, it has its limitations, and if we're talking drums, we run into problems like its fragility, limited tuning. So where am I going with this? Well, once again, I went back out to KHS America in Mount Juliet, Tennessee to spend some time with some vintage gear. I'm talking about the Sonar Vintage Series kit. I had seen and heard these at Summer NAMM, but now I had a little one-on-one with these beautiful drums. Some specs you should know that make these drums a modern vintage kit. The shells are that hand-selected premium German beech shell with rounded bearing edges. Keep in mind, this comes from the same forest of beechwood trees that were used in the manufacturing of Sonar drums from the 1960s. The recreated teardrop lugs are a big deal. They look and feel just like the original, but now it has Sonar's exclusive tune-safe system. In other words, they stay in tune. There are many beautiful finishes you can choose from, like the Vintage Pearl and my favorite, the Red Oyster. It looks, sounds, and feels like a vintage kit, but maintains the quality and reliability of a modern kit. You could really call this a modern vintage kit. So go to us.sonar.com to learn more about the vintage series and find a dealer near you. To find out more about this podcast and other recordings we've done, go to workingdrummer.net. You can find all of our episodes, 1 to almost 100, which is coming up at the end of this month. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, and while you're there, leave a rating and a review. That helps us grow. Find us on all the social media like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So let's get to it. Here is Hubert Payne. You and I are just talking about putting together, or we were talking about Keo's idea, Keo Stroud's idea, who was a guest on this podcast earlier last year, about doing a Black Drummers of Nashville roundtable, and talk about this thing that doesn't get talked about very much. Mm-hmm. But what you were saying something about being in places where people aren't used to seeing you in this role. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, often I find myself in situations, it's funny, man, I'll be in a stadium full of people, and I'll be the only person of color, like African-American person there. And that's something that happens often, you know? For me personally, I take it as a challenge. And first and foremost, I feel like God has placed me in this position for a reason. And everything in my life has led up to this point. Yeah. I've been processed for a certain journey. Yeah. And when I look, we can get into the backstory, and it's pretty crazy how I've been kind of molded for this position. But I take some responsibility to, kind of watch my behavior, the way that I deal with people, always with love, because a lot of people, just because of circumstance, they haven't, been around an African-American person. I get a ton of, at my security, at my Little Big Town security, I get that a ton, and I've had issues with that, but I choose to react to it in a way that will keep me in position, and I won't jeopardize what God's plan is for me to be there. So it's just really huge for me to be responsible and kind of have a positive experience with people as a player and as a person with, catering or security or whoever I'm dealing with, fans, because a lot of times in Middle America, just because of the way things are, there's not a lot of people who look like me there. So, if I can kind of maybe change someone's mind might be made up. A lot of people they think, black dude, he must behave like a rapper or something like that. Nothing against that, but well,
at the end of the day, you're helping to affect change in the narrative that is very pervasive in our society.
Yeah.
And it seems like more so now. So here you're, like you say, given this grand opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say responsibility but it is an opportunity.
Well,
right?
I believe that blessings don't come without responsibility.
Okay.
If God gives you a blessing, an amazing blessing, then it's for a reason. It's for you to kind of carry out his purpose or his vision for your life, which is love and creating, his spirit here on earth. And if I can be a help to that, like I need to do that. Yeah. It's a responsibility.
Yeah.
Because I'm not, when I look at my life, I've worked really hard and I've had a ton of people love on me and help me out that look like, all across the board, all kinds of people. Yeah. So, but I'm not arrogant enough to just think that I'm just this amazing drummer. And, if I told you the experiences that I've had, especially this past year, 2016, it doesn't make any sense at all. And I just know that I'm in position because I understand it's a responsibility. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And again, we're going to try and do some sort of a roundtable here in Nashville and talk more in depth about some of these things and share some of those stories. I'm excited to do that, man. Yeah. And I'm glad you're here, dude.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm a fan of the podcast. So
Thank you. And it's going to be good to get to know you, and people that do know you just speak very highly of you as a person.
Awesome.
Beyond your drumming, and into who you are as an individual, including Matt Thomas Schumacher, who says hello.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Cool. All right.
So,
what's up, man?
Well, let's talk about what you've been doing this year, and then we'll get some background. You've been playing drums with Little Big Town as of 2015?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes I like to talk about like what's going on right now, and of course it's almost the new year. This will come out in a couple weeks, so it'll be January when people hear this. But your 2016 has been good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, man.
Well, can you talk about some things that have happened?
Well, first of all, we were on the Luke Bryan tour, so we did that tour 2016. That was amazing. Also, Girl Crush was kind of peaking, the last single, and we did a ton of TV and just supporting that song, and it was a crazy experience. I mean, like doing the Billboard Awards and all of the award shows and just seeing how that song affects people was really cool. Some unexpected things that happened I had no clue about. We actually recorded a record with Pharrell Williams.
Really?
Yeah, and that was a crazy experience because he's a huge hero of mine. So it was cool to work with him, and you kind of just sit in a room in a studio as much as I could, just sit behind him and watch him work. So that was great. And we also recorded Little Big Town's their country record, which is coming out in February. It's called The Breaker. So we did that one with Jay Joyce, and I thank God that they opened the door and let me play on the records, which is rare, and I appreciate it.
It is a rare thing, and for a lot of people who don't know, that is changing, which is awesome. But for a long time, you would have the band would back up an artist on the road and be the tour band, and then you'd have quote unquote session players playing on the record, and it'd be like a small handful of drummers that would play on every record. Yeah. And now more artists are using the band that they have. They may be on the cover of their record. They may be in their videos mostly, but they're surrounding themselves with musicians that they trust. And so a band like Little Big Town, and Brad Paisley and some of these other groups are using their musicians that are on board.
Yeah. I think it's a cool thing, man.
It is a cool thing,
it's
man.
A really cool thing.
I'm excited. So this record isn't out yet?
No. It'll be out February 24th. I believe. Yeah.
All right.
We actually just finished it like maybe a week and a half ago. So
wow.
It was basically a whole year worth of kind of going in and, you know, tracking some tunes, and I don't know which ones will make the record or not, but
how many songs did you record?
I think we wound up 17 or 18 total.
Wow.
And I don't know what they're going to cut it down to, but it'll be interesting to see how it turns out, takes shape.
And how did that experience differ than Pharrell?
Polar opposites.
Okay.
So with Pharrell, it was more of so the first time I come into the studio and Pharrell's there, we were at the studio in Nashville. I want to say it was Blackbird. I might be wrong. I was just super excited.
In Berry Hill?
Yeah. I was just really excited because it was a last minute text. And I didn't know that they were going to use me on the records at all. I wasn't expecting that. I know they'd done it in the past with Seth, the old drummer, but I didn't know that I had gained that trust yet. So it was a last minute thing. Pharrell just like, can we use your guys' band? And I got a text from Karen, can you come to the studio now? And I was like, I'll be there in 45 minutes. So I went in, and the way that he works, he kind of has an idea for the drums, and he's just like, hey, this is the pattern. And the way that we recorded that record is linear in a sense of like, so I just kind of played a beat as if it was programmed.
Gotcha.
And I might stack another drum part or a brush part over it. But it wasn't like tracking in like a more of a country tune where like the drums are responding to the song and like the bridge is here, the chorus is here. It was more of a, hey, this is the groove. Make this feel like heaven. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a song called One Dance. And I literally walked in the studio and Pharrell's like, hey, me and you are going to take over the radio. You're not going to play the snare. You're just going to play kick and hi-hat. Make it feel amazing. And I was like, all right, done. Wow. And I put a snare on the bridge, but the whole song is just kick and hi-hat. And, you know, that was cool and challenging in that way.
Do you remember the pattern? Well,
it was more of a. You ever heard that song? No. I think "Miss You."
Stones.
Yeah. So I was thinking that when I tracked it. Yep, that's the groove. I just throw that, but the breakdown part is just kick and hi hat.
Yeah.
But I made that like that whole song. So One Dance is got that Stones feel. Like that's where it is. But it was cool to experience and then watch him kind of put it all together. And he's great with melody, and it was really cool to see him and LBT kind of like bounce off each other with lyrics and like, you know, he's so off the wall, you know, it's crazy.
That's awesome.
And I mean, we were in LA once recording with him, and Justin Timberlake was in the other room.
What?
And it's just as random as like Justin comes in, listens to a track, and Pharrell's like, hey man, you want to get on this song? And Justin's like, yeah, why not? So he winded up kind of like vocal producing and like really kind of producing one of the tunes that we were creating at the time.
Wow.
And it was just really fun. And I'm just sitting here like, how did I get in this room right now? But it was really cool, man. Now with Jay Joyce, that record took more time.
With Jay Joyce with Little Big Town.
Right.
Okay.
But we were kind of doing the records at the same time. We finished the Pharrell one first, but like I said, we just finished the one with Jay. Jay, it's a typical Nashville thing. We get some demos, a lot of acoustic, and then Jay would just kind of have a vision, and he might come to me like, "Hey man, what do you think?" And for me, like that was just like it was a playground, you know, because he's got all kinds of drum kits in there, and he's going for weird tones.
Is this at Blackbird as well?
No. So Jay has a church.
Oh, okay.
Literally a church.
Yeah.
It's just a church, and I track drums in the pulpit. Literally. And we did, and you know, they will have like LBT's vocal where the pews would be.
Yeah.
And, you know, John Thomason playing bass standing on a chair in front of the pulpit, and Evan Weatherford playing just wherever, you know, him standing on a chair. We just kind of, you know, do it like that. But
And how far in advance did you get the demos?
The day of. Day of. So it's Jay actually doesn't encourage a ton of thinking about what we're gonna do.
Right.
It's more just, hey man, we're gonna do this right now. What do you feel?
Yeah.
You know, what's speaking to you?
What's the first thing that comes to you?
Yeah.
Which is usually the best.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And you know, he might have some critiques, but I'm really excited about the grooves that I got to play. You know,
cool.
And the tones, like we would sit with his team. He's got a team of guys, Jason and the team of guys, and we would literally spend the first 2 or 3 hours just working on drum tones. Mm-hmm. So the tones you hear on the record, that's what it sounded like in a church, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just a cool experience, man. And Jay, he'll get on you, you know what I mean? He'll push you past your comfort zone, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, and I'm just going to say this, man, just to encourage people, the first record that I ever played on was Pharrell's. The first song that I recorded with Pharrell was the third song I had recorded in my entire life.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, it's
a good place to start.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool. But what I also did at the top of the year, because I knew it was a possibility I could be recording, I went and I called my buddy Miles McPherson. He's a great drummer in town, recording drummer. I said, Miles, man, I need to get on the recording side of this thing. Like, I got $1,000. What do you think I should do? I'm standing in Guitar Center right now. And he said, man, keep your money and just save up until you can buy some, you know, valuable gear.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, Miles. I hung up the phone, and then I went and bought the cheapest mics that I could. Totally ignored what he told me. Man, I just took that $1,000 and I asked a bunch of questions, and I got an interface, and I got the cheapest mics I could find, and a couple, you know, mic stands, just enough to get started. Yep. But what I wanted to do was prove to myself that I could do this. Yes. You know, because I feel like in my spirit, God was like pulling me to kind of go down this road. I didn't know about the Pharrell thing. I didn't know if LBT would use me with Jay, but I felt like I wanted to do it. And to do my part, to be ready for what he had for me,
yes, it
took me, you know, getting in the studio, which was my house.
Yeah,
hooking up some mics, figuring out, you know, okay, this is the snare mic, this is the top snare mic. What input is that? And spending a bunch of time doing that and seeing how the drums respond under the mics. Yep. And kind of, when I started, I would just make up some music, like track something, try to play with it, then listen back. Whoa, that's a little ahead. Mm-hmm. It's a little on top. Or, okay, this kind of groove feels better if I sit it back. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times what you think in your mind is different than the way that it comes across once you're in a red, you know? So
no, that's real important, and that's the thing that modern drummers have at their beck and call is technology.
Yeah. Yep.
And as much as I'm so guilty of this, wanting to spend practice time just getting at it.
Yeah, that's where I am right now. Yeah,
and breaking a sweat.
Yeah,
and getting that feeling of playing. And sometimes when time is at a premium, I just need to sit down and play.
Yeah.
But when you practice, you want to grow. You want to make progress. Yeah. And so taking the time to hit the space bar, record, play a little bit, stop, turn, look back at the computer, go back. You're spending minutes, time, like stop, you stop playing and you're listening. That's growing. Mm-hmm. That's practicing. It's hard for me to accept that, but that is practicing.
Yes, it is. It really is. And I think it's important. As I've gotten older, I've realized, number one, for being in Nashville, it's about the song. You know, and a lot of times we spend a lot of time practicing things that may not be applicable to playing great drums for songs. You know, Now, a lot of that comes from we grew up watching maybe Vinny Caluta or something. It's like, or Dave, and it's like, man, I want to play like that. I want to be able to speak like that and phrase like that. But what has happened for me, which I think was huge, I found some other heroes like Aaron Sterling. He speaks to me. So when I started diving into Aaron, and I'm like, what do I like about what Aaron's doing? And I started to take responsibility for my inspiration, which I feel like is a huge thing. I'm like, let me dive in. So Aaron he's a great studio drummer.
Yeah.
And that's why he speaks to me. The way that he phrases, it never gets in a way, but it always captures the energy. Mm-hmm. And I listen to like Sarah Bareilles every day, her last record.
Me too, man.
He crushed it. And he's got like he's got a ton of videos online about recording and like how to get certain tones, and that's practicing as well.
Yeah.
And for me, what I like to do is make people's song come to life. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love to play drums, but for me, I like to be support. Like that's where my heart is. That's my personality. So, I mean, it might not be as fun as like working out a syncopation and like seeing what you can do with it, you know, but it's applicable knowledge to you working. It's applicable knowledge to you, to like an artist being able to look back and enjoy what I'm doing. And what I've learned is it really changed my playing a ton, doing a lot more recording.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So are you doing more home recording now?
Man, it's crazy because I got on a website called Air Gigs. I don't know if you've heard of this.
I saw that.
And I just looked at it. I honestly, one of my buddies told me about it. And honestly, for me, it was a way for me to convince my wife that I can go spend this $1,000. You know, I'm like, man, I can get on this website and kind of, you know, I can track songs for people wherever they are.
Is this the voice you use for your wife?
Yeah, that's my voice.
You changed it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, that's my convincing voice. Yeah,
okay, I get it.
When I'm trying to get something done. So yeah, I'm like, yeah, babe, I can. You know, this website is great. I got my profile up. People have to pay me before I even know about it. Yeah. And I track their songs, and I'll make this money back. Don't worry about it. I had no clue. But I got on that website, and work started to come in. And the cool thing about that site is you get reviews, you know. And I got some positive reviews early, and it kind of snowballed, and I had like return customers. So while I'm recording with Pharrell, like we would go out to LA whenever we had a break from tour, and then we started the J record, and so I'm doing both those records, and in the middle of it, kind of keeping the glue, I was getting a ton of air gigs, and with the air gigs, I was able to kind of like, you know, touch the walls in a sense, and like, well, what happens if I play this over this groove with not as much consequence, because I really value, you know, the work that people were sending me.
No, I know what you're saying, but I mean, it doesn't have the weight.
Yeah, right, I mean, Pharrell's not next door, and Jay's not in the drum room with me, you know. So it was cool to kind of see what I can do, and for me, it was getting my chops up, you know. So.
Well, have you ever experienced this because when I record at home, I don't have somebody saying, that's it, that's the one.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh man, I know I can do better. And then 17 takes later.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, so how do you deal with that? Do you give yourself a stopgap? You're like, this is it.
My deadline, because a lot of times it's like 3 days. But I'm really really obsessed with. I'll do 20 something takes of these songs, and it's the simplest thing.
Yeah.
But for me, it's, you know, to go from good to great, or even not as good to good, you have to like be able to focus, and like people who are really good at something, they see little details. You know what I mean? So once you get into take 24, I'm still learning, and I'm really excited about that, because I'm like, oh man. Every time I listen, I find something different in the track, and then those things become chops, and then like you know, like when you learn a paradiddle, you learn how to put it around a kit. When you're listening to the 24th take, the things that you learn that are better than your first take, those become chops. And
discover something about yourself.
And that's why Aaron Sterling's playing is attractive. That's why Steve Jordan's playing is attractive for JJ Johnson, because, and it's like, man, they're doing something really simple. I can play that beat. But when you sit down and play with it, you're like, wait, this doesn't feel the same, you know? Right. But that's because they're into the deep takes, in a sense. You know what I mean? They're in the deep takes of their life. Right.
You know, so when Steve Jordan lays down that groove that you know he's done 1,000 times, he's doing it for the 1,000th time. That first take.
Yep.
Yeah, where a lot of us we're making up for lost time.
Yep.
Well, can you just give a brief rundown of the rig that you have now and how that works? Well, I mean, without going into great tech detail.
Yeah, well, I bought like a Focusrite interface.
Okay.
And then my buddy Lester. And then, you got to go to your friends, just like when you're trying to learn the chops. Like I used to go to Keo or, call freaking Kevin Murphy and be like, yo, when you play this on a record? Now it's regarding recording equipment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I got some 57s and someone told me that I can kind of use those on everything.
Yeah.
So I do. And so I got the Focusrite, and my buddy Lester, we just added a PreSonus to it. So now I have more than 8 inputs.
Okay.
So I have multiple things, and I have what Lester likes to call a GAC mic. I'll just use some random mic on the floor and we blow it out. And we put up room mics and that it's a really simple setup. I don't have like pre's outside of what are in my interface, but what I've learned is people, most of the time when you're recording drums at home, they don't need your creative input in the audio. You know what I mean? They just want, a lot of times people, I just want raw drum tracks.
So they can, and that is the question. It's like, what do I do with this stuff? How do I tweak it? How do I sweeten it? Like you don't. They want your performance that they can't recreate on a drum machine or samples. That's why they're calling you. Otherwise, they wouldn't call you.
Yep.
And then they'll do with it what they want. Because we've all recorded on records where somebody's done something with our tracks. You're like, why did they do that?
Yep.
It's like,
it was a ton of that. It was even a ton of that this year.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
when you get it back, you're like, where's my tom?
Yeah. Or where's my ghost notes? Things like that. But that's up to them. And it's time for you to take your hands off. You did your job.
Hey, man, great job. We cleaned up your left hand. Yeah. There's a lot of chatter going on there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, totally.
Here's my check.
Yeah. I'm always talking to LBTs, the audio guys. I got a buddy named Josh Reynolds, and he told me something that just it just blew my world. He's like, dude, listen, there's a huge learning curve to this thing. So when something becomes a problem, that's when you buy something new. You know what I mean? So don't go out and start trying to buy pre's and all these expensive mics when your ears can hear the difference, because that's a learning curve as well. For me, I didn't know anything about recording drums.
It's like voice training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it didn't make sense for me to, go spend a bunch of money that I just didn't have, or sit back and wait, because I've gotten the ball rolling now because I jumped in, you know, and I'm learning about myself and the way that I respond and like the things that I don't like, the things that I, dig.
Right.
Well, we didn't, when we were young, we didn't wait until we could buy like an expensive DW kit to start doing gigs.
You're right.
You play gigs. You weren't like, I'm not leaving the house until this major artist calls me. No, you jumped in and then you developed. Right. You know what I mean? Right. So why is it that when it comes to recording, now I get the argument that you can kind of, you want to protect your reputation. Right. But I think it's more important if you make it about you chasing skill, then all of those things will take care of itself. That's kind of what I kind of try to hang my hat on.
Well, we try and come up with excuses. We're like, I'm not really ready for this. And so stuff never happens and life will overtake you. Yep. It's time to just jump in and as I tell my kids, just grip it and rip it, man. Yeah. Just do it. Stop
that's
trying
good.
to decide.
That's good. That's good, man. And even, I'll say this one piece about it. Like financially, it's getting harder and harder, I feel like, to kind of just be a live guy and have a ton of resources. I'll say that, because that's just the way that it is. But if you can kind of support what you do live at home, and confidence wise, I feel like every drummer has something to offer. You know what I mean? So don't feel like, oh man, I can't play like Aaron Sterling, so who's gonna want me to record or whatever? I mean, it's just about the way that you speak, and someone can use that. There are tons of people who need their problem solved. So just do it.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that about making a living just as a live drummer. And man, you've got a killer gig.
Yes.
And so that means a lot coming from you. Yeah. You're playing with a very well established artist group that has been around for a long time. So it's kind of like, that makes sense. Let's go back. You're from Detroit.
Yep.
And just kind of, when did drums happen for you?
Well, my dad was a drummer. He was a professional drummer, touring drummer. And I don't remember when I started playing because I just wanted to be like him. He was the man in my eye. I loved the way people treated him. Like everyone loved my dad, and he was just well respected. And as a young boy, I kind of felt like, well, yeah, I dig that. And he played drums, so that it spoke to me. And, my grandfather would buy me drums and stuff like that. But my dad actually didn't want me to play at all. So he did not teach me one thing. he did everything in his power to kind of steer me to sports or football. I was big into football. And
it's like Zach Starkey.
Yeah, he's like, man, which I understand. I had a chip on my shoulder growing up because he wouldn't teach me things. And I literally didn't play with other players until I was 21. I played in a room by myself, just kind of in my head, just playing drums. But I had a chip on my shoulder because, he wouldn't teach me certain things, but in his mind, he wanted me to go to college. He dropped out of high school to play in the jazz band, and he didn't want the kind of up and down financial situation for me and my family. I
understand.
And I mean, I totally get it now. And now he's super proud of me and he's really supportive, but I also have my degree. Yeah. And, if I couldn't play drums, I can still stand and take care of my family. Yeah. But, man, I was always just kind of watching him practice and he's all about grooving and he plays like his personality. Like he's a very demanding, disciplined man. He's very loving. He's very creative. He's funny. And he plays like that. Yeah. And when I hear him play now, I'm totally just a knockoff of him.
Yeah, that's
but
awesome.
I just kind of grew up more in Nashville, so I kind of I'm a product of Nashville. I feel like with my dad's fingerprint, and it's really cool to watch him play. And
that served you well, I think.
Yeah. Sure. It's crazy, man. It almost, because I hadn't heard him play in a while, and a few months back I was listening to him play in the garage, and it just brought me to tears because I could totally see the positive feedback I get about my playing. It was just my dad, because I wasn't around other drummers.
Well, let me ask you about that. One of the questions I ask people is, what's kind of one of the most common compliments that you get? And is there something about that? You said the things that people say or describe something about your playing that reminds you of your dad as well. Is there one of those things?
I get a ton of, and I'm really grateful, pocket and groove. Because those things mean the most to me, and I get a ton of that. And that also comes from, because my dad was a professional working drummer.
Yes.
He, at a very young age, I mean, he wouldn't teach me anything, but I can remember when I was 8, literally this might be the only sentence he's ever said to me until I was an adult. I mean, he could teach me now, but I came downstairs and I was playing in the attic. And I don't know, can you curse on the podcast? I don't know.
You totally can.
But my dad was like, I don't know why you playing all that shit. And I was like, what you mean? He's like, none of that matters. You know why I work? And I still remember the groove. He said that the reason why I work is because when I play, when I play that, you feel that. And it's got an energy in it. He's like, that's all that matters for playing drums. And that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
So that, and just the limitations that I didn't know how to develop on drums. I didn't take lessons back then. I went to school later in life. But so for me, I just literally would go and play beats by myself. And looking back, I thank God, because that's what my game is now. You know, I have a certain sound because I literally didn't play with other people until I was 21. So I spent a ton of time if I heard a groove, I would just go play it. If I watched my dad, I would just go, I'm like, okay, he's playing that groove with that band.
Yeah.
And I would just go try to mimic it, or a night show. I was always about the night. That's the only time I could see live drummers.
Okay, yeah.
But and then I got a Carter Beauford tape in high school and it was over, but yeah. Yeah.
So there was no teachers at that point. Okay. Was there music you were playing along with?
A lot of Earth, Wind, and Fire. My grandfather was, and I had an uncle who really exposed me to a lot of great music, a lot of Incognito. a lot of Mint Condition, a lot of Parliament. And my family was big on just listening to music at all times. It was always some music, bumping. My dad, actually, he moved to California, and he was Dr. Dre's session drummer for a while, and he wanted to move his family out there, but he cut that plan, and he came home, and that's when he quit being a touring drummer. But while he was out there, I was getting like Dr. Dre's The Chronic. I got that before it came out, or like Above the Rim. And like all of the Tupac stuff, because my dad didn't know what he played on, because his job was just to go in the studio, kind of just play, and Dre would maybe cut it up, maybe not, or whatever. So tons of rap music growing up, and my parents they were big into like, you know what's right from wrong. They didn't care about the lyrics. So even today I listen to my sound is more of a very heavy pocket, like, a Dre beat, because I grew up with that kind of sound in my ears for drums. That's what spoke to my parents, and when we were hanging out, that's what we listened to.
Yeah. So in school, and you say you went to college.
Yeah.
And I know you played football.
Yeah.
How involved in music were you at that point?
Well, the only reason I moved to Nashville was to play football at Middle Tennessee State. I didn't even know it was Music City. Didn't know. And I grew up, and most of my family was Jehovah's Witnesses, so I didn't never go to church. Yeah. And one day, one of my buddies, he tricked me. He's like, "Man, what are you doing on Sunday?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Nothing, man. What's up?" He's like, "Dude, come to church with me." And I was like, "Dude, I've never been to church. I don't know about, you guys got music playing. I don't know about all that."
Yeah.
But I wound up going. I got saved at that church, and a year later, I started playing drums in that church. So that was kind of the beginning of like playing in college. I still wasn't playing very many gigs. I didn't have time with football, but I would practice literally all day, every day. If I wasn't, I would wake up in the morning. I had a drum set in my room. I lived in the house, and I would just play, go to class, lift weights, go to football practice, come back to the room, and play.
Wow!
Because for me, I had spent my whole life in a room by myself. So once I had the outlet of being like, oh man, on Sunday I get to play with Mike. He plays organ and Jason plays bass. And so it kind of just sparked like this. It was like I was a child again at 21. And I feel like that was
the
huge.
time when you played with people.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I any opportunity I got to play, I was just really grateful for it. And I feel like, and I would love to talk about this because I feel like, man, I had a childlike like zeal for playing anything, and I didn't publish myself. I didn't feel like, I didn't get my feelings hurt when I didn't get certain opportunities, because I felt like, man, I'm behind anyway. So it was all the catch up, I didn't have any ego, and I still don't, because I just felt like, man, I'm just now starting,
Yeah.
And I feel like that served me well as an adult.
Yeah.
Because ego kind of gets in the way of, it just gets in the way of opportunities a ton in relationships, and it's just not attractive.
And interpersonal, it can be very damaging.
Yeah. So because I was a sponge, I took everything in, and I think that was huge. Yeah. So that's when I kind of started playing, and then when I got done with football, and I I totally thought I would be playing in the NFL, but when that didn't happen, after I got over it, I just stayed in Nashville. I stayed. I mean, I've moved a couple places. Like I went back to school in LA, and
I was going to say, I put this down. LA Music Academy. Yeah. What was that like?
Dude, it was amazing. So I was literally 20. I was 26, and I was kind of playing some gigs here and there, practicing a ton, but I didn't feel like I was growing at the rate that I wanted to grow.
Sure.
And I was sitting in Bourbon Street one night, and Pat McDonald walked in, he sat in, and he played Come Together, and he played a drum solo, and it just blew my face off. And I was like, you know what? If I want to seriously do this thing for a living, and I want to take care of my family doing this, I need to have the wow factor. I need to have a command over my instrument like he does. So, man, 2 days later, it was like I was up watching like TV One or something. It was 2:00 in the morning, and Macy Gray came on TV, and the drummer was this guy named Sean Horton. I didn't know him at the time, but he spoke to me. It was almost like, oh my! Every note that he played spoke to me, and his groove was just infectious. So I went on MySpace at the time, and I looked up his bio, and it was like, Sean Horton's from New York. He moved to LA to go to LA Music Academy, where he learned how to read. I was done. I was like, okay,
wow.
Well, I want this. I've made up my mind that I want this, and whatever it takes for me to do, I'm willing to do it.
Yeah.
And whatever he did to be that special, to have his fingerprint that loud, in a sense, I'm gonna do it. So the next day, I called the school. I got some information. I saw that you can get a scholarship. So I made a quick video with some buddies, and I got a scholarship to go there. And I had an uncle that lived out there, so I just moved out to LA, and I slept on his couch for a year and went to school, and I learned how to read. I studied with Ralph Humphreys, and it was great. I learned how to like dissect a song.
Did you meet Sean?
Yeah. I met Sean. He actually, for the first time this year, we got to hang out. I'm 33 now, but we got to like actually hang out. But and he's still kind of like my guy. I watch him every day, and he's like kind of a compass for me.
Yeah.
But man, I went out there. Once I learned how to read, it was just like, oh man. And it's funny because I wound up playing less notes because I'm like, well, these things matter, and I could do that, but I don't. When I came home from LA Music Academy, career-wise, I kind of still didn't know what I wanted to do. I literally, it was a Monday. It was January 4th. It was a Monday, 2010. And on Tuesday, I had some friends in Atlanta, and I wasn't in the country music scene yet. I had a bunch of stigma. I was like, man, I don't know. I don't really see anyone who looks like me. I don't know. I need to go somewhere else. So I had a buddy, and I was going to go play acoustic guitar at this church in Atlanta. I was going to audition on a Tuesday. So that Monday, I go to 12th and Porter, and I'm hanging out with some friends. And I was having a conversation about IHOP. I was like, dude, it's your birthday. Let's go to IHOP.
This is heavy, man. Yeah.
So this guy comes from the back door at 12th and Porter, and he gets on the stage. He just walks in. It's around midnight, and the show's over. So there's no music playing. There's about 50, 60 people still in the club. They're packing up. I didn't play. I was just coming to see like some friends play. So he gets on the stage, and he gets in the mic, and he's like barking something, screaming, and he's got like a tall can of beer in his hand. And I'm like, this is kind of weird. I wonder where security is. They should probably get this guy, before we get out of here. But so when no one was paying attention to him, he pulled out the biggest knife I've ever seen. It looked like a machete. And I remember thinking like, man, how did he pull that out of his pants? And he gets off the stage. Now, it's about maybe 10 or 15 of us kind of cornered near the front of the stage.
Do you remember what he was talking about at all? Or is
no clue what he was talking about.
Gotcha.
I just remember him yelling, y'all don't want to F with me. You don't want to. I'll kill every single one of y'all in here right now, and no one do anything about it. And obviously he was under the influence of something. And so he gets off the stage, slices the beer can, and makes a barrier on the ground with the beer. And I'm like, okay, no security is going to come and save us right now. And it was almost like our energy attracted each other, because I'm like, man, there's women around me. Physically, I have a ton of confidence. I'm a football player. So I was like, okay, I got to stop this guy. I don't really know how this is going to go down, but if I don't do it, he's just going to start swinging his knife and hitting people,
Yeah.
But it was almost like he was reading my thoughts, and he walked right in my face, and he put the knife up to my head. So I thought about when me and my brother were young. It was weird. This happens when you get into traumatic experiences. So when me and my brother were young, we were like 8 and 7. We were watching Power Rangers, and the Red Ranger, like one of the monsters came up to him, and he put something up to his head. And the Red Ranger, he acted really calm, and then he grabbed the monster's arm, and the weapon came out of his arm.
Yeah.
And so I remember saying, if this ever happened to me, that's what I'm going to do. So I tried to be really calm. And when he put the knife up to my head, in my mind, I'm like, Red Ranger, grab his arm. He'll drop it. So when I grabbed his arm, I jumped on him. I grabbed his arm, put it in the air. He didn't drop the knife. But we were already engaged. So I'm like, okay, this is going to happen.
It's going to happen, yeah.
So he just started jabbing me like anywhere he could.
Yeah.
I had on a coat.
Yeah.
Thank God. I had on a leather coat, fake leather coat, but it was pretty thick.
Yeah, right.
And he was aiming for my stomach. I didn't, because I was trying to swing too. I didn't know, if I was getting hit or not.
Yeah.
And my adrenaline was pumping.
Yeah.
But I noticed I was bleeding. So when I noticed I was bleeding, I kind of pushed away from him. And he was looking at me like he couldn't believe what he'd done, but he was still really amped up. And I looked at my hand and it was just like sliced right down the middle. And the first thing I thought about was, how am I going to take care of myself? I didn't have a ton of gigs. I wasn't making a ton of money, but the only thing I've ever done was play drums for a living,
Yeah.
So, I was kind of freaking out, man. I was stumbling around the club. He went back yelling at a bunch of other people. And I tried to stumble. I stumbled out the front door. And thank God there was a police officer on a traffic stop on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
So I thought that I was running to his car. So the crazy thing is this guy chased me to the police car. He gets arrested and an ambulance picks me up. And I noticed that, it literally felt like someone took a bucket of water and poured it down my pants leg, but it was blood. And
my God,
they cut my clothes off in the ambulance. And once I got to the hospital and I got cleaned up, the doctor's like, man, you only have 2 wounds, which is amazing. The first one is in your femur. So he got me in the side of the leg and it nicked my femur bone. It's pretty bad, but wow, I can recover from it.
Yeah.
He said the issue is, when he sliced your hand, he cut a tendon. So he cut the tendon to my pinky finger.
Okay.
So it was just kind of stuck.
Which hand?
Straight out, my left hand.
Your left hand. Uh-huh.
So, and I'm left-handed actually.
Oh, okay.
But so he cut the tendon, but my pinky was just like stuck straight out. And he's like, man, you need to get immediate surgery. Mm-hmm. I can fix it. He's like, I got a guy that can fix it, but you won't ever regain motion of the pinky finger. But if you get this surgery, you'll have control of the other fingers somewhat. Mm-hmm. Because, if you cut a tendon, they all kind of connect here and they roll up together.
Yeah.
At the bottom of your hand, and I would lose complete control. And I was like, man, whatever you got to do. Now, at the time, I didn't have insurance. I didn't have money to get it done. But
you don't think about that stuff.
You don't think about that stuff, man. And
you can't.
I was blessed to have a ton of friends have a benefit concert for me like that next week. And they kind of helped me get into the surgery and, pay for some things. So I got the surgery and the doctor's like, man, it's going to take about a year. But when you come back, you will be able to hold a drumstick. You might have to learn to play different, a different technique. But you will come back. Mm-hmm. So now I'm not going to lie. The first month, man, I lost everything. I lost my apartment at the time. I had to sell my truck. No, first I had to sell my drums to pay my car note. Then I had to sell my car to just make it to the next step. But the way that I figured it out for me, I feel like I was chosen to be in that situation because I have a support system. My parents they moved down to Tennessee as well. I moved in with my parents, and it wasn't fun, but I had somewhere to go. I literally sat on the couch for 6 months, and I got a chance to evaluate my life and figure out, man, what do I want out of this music thing? Like, I want to get married one day. I want to have children. I want to tour. I want to like take care of my family and I want to help people. Like that's huge to me. I'm a motivated person. I want to motivate people, and I'm going to do these things.
Yeah.
So, but when I reevaluated, when I had time to sit down, I was forced to sit down, and I had to work up my technique. I mean, I went from grabbing sand to playing with like tennis balls, and when I was able to pick up a stick again, I was just elated, you know.
Wow.
But what I decided to do was like, man, you know what? I don't care if people don't look like me. I don't care if it's country music. I don't care what it is, dude. When I get healthy, I'm going downtown because I saw drum sets down there.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna swing sticks as much as people will let me do it.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna let anything hold me back because I literally have a second chance at life now.
Yes.
But it was literally the best thing that has ever happened to me.
Well, you have a quote on when I was doing some sleuthing online, trying to get to know you a little bit better. You have a quote on your Facebook page. You have two of them. You have one from your dad and you have one from yourself, which I've never seen, but it's very apt. Your quote is, "You are a product of how you react to adversity."
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
And you've come to my attention to be on this podcast, and friends are like, "You've got to talk to Hubert. He's got stories, he's got things, and there's lots of things that are happening, and there's lots of stuff that he's done in the past here. He'd be perfect for the podcast." This is it in a nutshell, man. This is how you've reacted to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. You know, I must say, man, I've been totally blessed since then. Mm-hmm. I've fathered 3 more children. I'm a married man, and it's not easy, but you know, I've been set up, and I feel like God processed me a certain way. Mm-hmm. He didn't give me anything that I couldn't handle. He doesn't give any of us anything we can't handle. But
right.
if you look at the adversity and use that to kind of push you through, it will become the thing that sustains your success.
Right.
You know, I feel like more often than not, people call me to play because they just want to hang with me. Not saying I'm just like this like party guy, but I'm cool to be around. It's not necessarily about I'm gonna come in and just blaze the drum set and be incredible. You know, I'm gonna do my homework and I'm gonna do a great job. But I think people enjoy being around me because you know I understand certain things. I understand certain things personally, and that's because I've been through some very difficult things, and it was quite humbling. And
but you don't let it affect you in a negative way.
No, that's our decision. Yeah,
right.
That's our decision. I mean, every time something negative happens to me, I try to get excited about it because I'm like, this is a process. Like God chastens who He loves. It's in a word. You know what I mean? And if you're getting pressed in a certain way, it's for development, for something amazing that's for you. Like if you feel insecure about something and you're playing, if you attack that, it will be the reason why someone calls you to do something. You know what I mean? Because when I look back, man, honestly, like auditioning is crazy. And I've had to audition for the last few gigs that I've had. And when it's 10 drummers auditioning and you're standing in a hallway at sound check, it's like, well, what do you have to offer that's different? You know what I mean? And a lot of times with country music, it's not placed for you to kind of play a bunch of notes. And a lot of artists don't even understand. They're not going to be like, oh, man, that guy's independence is amazing. We need to get that drummer. So people respond to what they feel. Yeah. So if you feel what you play, people will respond. Right. And what I try to do is like emote my life. Like I love my children. I love my wife. I love my friends. I have some pain in my heart. I got a few chips on my shoulder, you know, and when I play, I want people to feel that, you know, and when I'm listening to people's song that I'm playing behind, I'm supporting, I have so much emotional baggage I can draw from to kind of relate. And I just try to be relatable in that way and speak. And I think that's what's attractive in groove as well, you know, life.
Well, and I'm wow. I was going to say I'm going to take a stab here, but that's probably the wrong word to use.
It's all good. I'm cool with it.
Oh my God. You're getting inside my head, man.
Let's go.
Little Big Town.
Yeah.
I've been a fan for a long time. I like those guys a lot. Good studio performances. I know Chris McHugh is on some stuff.
Yeah.
And great songs, great harmonies. And I know Seth Rausch a little bit, and I've seen them live. And again, I'm just trying to I'm just taking a leap of faith here that just in this conversation, you seem like a perfect fit for this group.
Yeah.
And you've been with them for over a year now.
Yeah, almost 2 years.
Has it been? Is that true?
You're dead on. You're dead on. And it's crazy you mentioned that because, and I just want to tell this story because I feel like, man, a lot of people could benefit from it. I was a huge fan of the band, right?
Yeah.
I was a huge Seth Rausch fan.
Yeah.
And I'm really big on taking responsibility for your inspiration. Like whatever inspires you, that's part of like God's spirit giving you what you should chase. You know, that's the way I look at it. Now, Seth, I had really dove into the records. I would listen to Tornado and just listen to like because I'm like, man, every decision that he makes, it feels so good, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was a huge fan. So when I was with David Nail, we were opening up for LBT, and my buddy Blaine Reedy, he's a bass player. He knows Seth, and I was like, dude, can you introduce me to Seth? I just want to talk to him, kind of get inside of his head, see how he works, you know. And he's like, sure. So I sat down with Seth in like a trailer park in the middle of somewhere, and I got to talk to him, man. And the most amazing thing was how he lives as a person. He's a father of like 6.
Yeah.
And he's a dad. He's a Christian man. And I was just blown away, you know. Mm-hmm. And he listened to me play maybe 3 songs that night.
Yeah.
But when it came time for auditions, he threw my name in the hat. Mm. And I have to believe that most of it was because of a connection that he saw from when we hung out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So because I took responsibility for my inspiration, I chased Seth musically, and I was inspired by him as a man.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I left an impression with him. He threw my name in the hat. There were some other great drummers in the audition, but I feel like LBT, the reason why I feel like they picked me, mainly because of my feel. And I think the feel is because feel comes from like your sensitivities, I believe, as a person and as a player.
Okay.
And like you can't feel amazing on the drums being selfish. If you're thinking about what feel you're going to play next, you're not going to be able to contribute to the groove. Your ears aren't going to be open enough to make the music feel amazing. I think that takes a certain type of personality to do that. And Seth noticed it in me. And before I could even talk to LBT, I feel like they may have felt the supportive nature of my playing, you know, and that just reflects your personality, you know, and that goes across their whole organization. Like tons of family men in their organization. I don't think they have they don't have a sheet that you have to sign. Like, how many kids do you have? Are you married? Or do you respect your wife? They don't have that when you get into the organization, but they tend to surround themselves with those kinds of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From management all the way down. It's crazy. It's literally people that I love. And I really mean that, you know. It's a great atmosphere.
That's amazing.
Very loving, and we celebrate everyone's birthday. It's a big deal. It's crazy. I mean, it's a birthday every week, and they make a big deal out of it because, I mean, they're sweet people, and that's on and off the stage, and they set the standard, you know, and it just trickles down. So it's inspiring. It's amazing, amazing to be a part of.
Once you recovered, you worked with lots of different artists leading up to your current gig.
Yeah.
Casey James, Joel Crouse, probably my distant cousin, same spelling, which is weird.
Yeah.
And then the major artist gig you had before Little Big Town was David Nail.
Yeah.
So what happened to that?
Well, I was with David maybe 1.5 2 years, something like that. Loved it. He's an amazing singer and a really good friend. It was, I guess it was November. We were in Vegas. And like I said, me and my wife, at the time, we had 2 kids. And my wife called me. My buddy was in the room. She's like, babe, I'm pregnant again. And I was like, sweet. because this is what I always wanted. You know what I mean? And I'm real big on living faith-based. You know what I mean? So I was excited. And, the end of the year was coming up. So I knew in November, like, I was like, whoa, David was a great situation. And I was band leading. Great financial situation, but I had gotten to the point with my responsibilities because my wife doesn't work. She just kind of watches the kids. Mm-hmm. The only way that I could take care of my family and continue to play drums is if it was on the highest level possible. Literally, that was that was the plan that I came up with. Yeah. So in December, I had like my year-end meeting with management. And, we talked about next year, and I came home and I told my wife, I said, babe, I got to go. I love David. I love the situation, but financially with us having another kid, it was already tough. It was already tough with the kids we had. I was like, I prayed about it a ton, and I made a decision to put myself in position for the biggest blessing. Literally, that's what I came up with.
Gotcha.
So what I didn't want to do was be playing with David and be kind of sending out the text fillers like, hey, man, anybody know of any gig opening up? Mm-hmm. I didn't want to do that to David. And he deserved that much respect because I love the gig. Mm-hmm. And I want him to be able to find the right guy for the situation, which is Matt Eisman. He's amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I talked to David and I quit, and it was really difficult because I was a married man with my wife not working, no job, no idea what was going to happen next, with another baby on the way, and I didn't, it's just stepping out on faith. So when I was clean from David, a clean break, I just I sent out maybe a few filler texts, but I was willing to do whatever it took to make it to the next step. And I was going to just believe, like, you know what? I'm going to believe God that I have an amazing gift and I offer something amazing, and I will find the right situation, or it will find me. Yeah. So I was like going to do some others. I was going to try to go do some teaching, like substitute teaching or something. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I was willing to step out on faith and just, put myself in position to be blessed. Yeah. And not even 2 weeks later, one of my buddies was like, yo, man, you heard that Seth is going to Keith Urban? And I was like, no. He said, hey, man, are you in that Little Big Town audition? I was like, what? No. Why would Little Big Town need auditions? They got Seth. He's my guy, Yeah. Because Seth didn't say anything to me about it. He didn't say he put my name in the hat. Yeah. And so I was like, whoa, they're having auditions? That'd be cool to get a call for that gig, man. Yeah. Because I know exactly what I would do for that. I knew it. I knew the music. Yeah. I've seen them live. I was a fan of the band. I've seen all the YouTube clips. Yeah. And I was like, you know what, man? If I ever got in that seat, I know exactly what I would do with it. Yeah. And dude, the next day after my buddy called me, man, I was at the Music City Bowl, and John Thomason was like, called me like, man, would you be interested in auditioning for LBT? So they saw me with David. They saw me there, and Seth's referral got me in the audition. They didn't audition a bunch of guys, but I was excited, and I was just like, whoa, like, yeah, like God tugged on my spirit was tugged to make a move. It was for the right reasons, Yeah. It wasn't because I was upset about like, oh man, the catering is not this, or I don't have a drum tech, or it was for the right reasons. I wanted to provide for my family. I felt confident in my playing. The only reason I felt confident is because I'm better than I was last week because I practice every single day. Yeah. So a lot of times it's hard to make a move because you're not confident, but I felt confident in like my grind. Yeah. And so I was just like,
just a football term.
Yeah. Okay. It is. The grind is like your work culture, Yeah. So, I believed in that, and I took a step of faith, and it's like being at the roulette table, man, and like rolling and closing your eyes.
Very much so. Very much so.
And then it just blowing up in your favor.
Yeah.
Because that's literally what happened. I went through many phases, like the audition process, like, whoa, this is Little Big Town. They can get anyone they want to play drums. No telling who's going to be in this audition. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you know, and this will help guys, because I've done a ton of auditions, and I've been blessed to do well in most of them. Some of them not so well. But I feel like if you can understand that when you go in there, if it's 10 guys, you know, if you're close to your fingerprint and you know who you are as a player, you're not going to sound like someone else. And just because someone doesn't pick you doesn't mean you're not good. It just means they like McDonald's and not Burger King.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So don't go into it with that, like, I got to be better than this guy.
Yeah. And you were Chick-fil-A that day.
Yeah. So it's because if you go in there with that mindset, you won't play as free, because it's like you're very pessimistic about what's going on. It's like, I gotta be better. It's not a race. It's not football. It's not track. It's just like taste in food, in a sense, you know?
Yes.
And I felt like once I realized, like, man, you know what? I'm not going to sound like anybody else, because I understand my journey. I understand that I grew up playing in the room by myself. I can't sound like anybody else. I'm from Detroit. I have a certain, you know, the music I listen to is different. My path was different.
Yeah.
My left hand has a ton of cartilage and scar tissue, so it sounds a little different. Whatever your life story is, that's your fingerprint. Yeah. And when you go into a situation and you need to audition, like, maybe someone likes it or they don't. But if they don't like it, someone else will. And the way that I approach the drums, there are people who don't, you know, they don't dig it, they don't feel it, and that's okay. But what's for me is for me.
You have to be.
You know?
That's the thing about that. I get that. You have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
When I first moved to Nashville, I went from like a medium fish in a small pond to a very, very small fish in a very large pond.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a producer that didn't want to use a particular drummer that I thought that I continue to think is a god, who's just amazing. But he's like, no, I just don't like the way he hits the snare drum. And I'm just like, how can that be? But this was a successful producer that was making decisions, and the light bulb went off for me. And I'm like, it doesn't matter what you do. People will decide to use you or not use you based on what you do. And this has been a reoccurring thing. I always say this, but you sound better when you do what you do.
Yes.
You do not sound good trying to imitate. And imagine in an audition, if you're standing there and the 9 other players, and you're going, he's playing that fill a little bit more solidly, or his foot is killing. I can't do that, but I have to do that. So you're trying to imitate that person. Don't imitate that person. Imitate you.
Yes.
Be you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that comes with life. You know, I'm really big into, you know, you play like your personality. You play like, you know, the things that you understand in your life. Like if you notice, man, you can go on YouTube right now and you will find 10 little kids that can physically outplay me and a lot of my friends that have amazing situations, but you very rarely will find a kid that has amazing groove. Yeah, you're not going to pull up a YouTube of like, oh man, this guy's feel. He just landed in there, and it's just like super mature and attractive. Like it doesn't happen, because I believe, like, you know, when you harness the things you've gone through with the beauty that you understand and the life that you experience, that contributes to your groove.
Well, and one thing, when I saw Kenny Arnoff years ago at a clinic, and he was talking about Tony Royster Jr. when he was about 12 years old, and everybody was talking about this 12-year-old kid who just was blowing the doors off. This is before YouTube, of course.
Yeah.
And Kenny was like, yeah, Tony is great. Wow, he's amazing. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Don't be intimidated by this young kid and all the stuff that he does, because he hasn't been heartbroken yet.
Yeah.
He hasn't been. And when he gets old, and of course now Tony's just amazing, killing it.
Yeah.
And Tony was killing it too when he was that old, but it's like those things that Kenny knew that he brought to the table, and maybe some things that Tony could do better than Kenny Aronoff could do at 12 years old.
Yeah.
That didn't knock Kenny off his pedestal. He's like, no, I do like 2 or 3 things really good, and I've made a career out of it. And he exuded this confidence.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I've been through this, and I've been divorced, and I've been, and you know, I got replaced on John Cougar Mellon. You know, it's like he's lived this. But when you see him play, the passion that he has, it comes through, and it's probably all that stuff. So that being said, I will tell you, 2016 has been a shitty year for the world. I mean, think of all the artists that we've lost this year. And Carrie Fisher just died yesterday.
Crazy.
And we've lost so many musicians. I mean, Prince and David Bowie and just all these musicians. And just the climate of the world right now is just so upended that I have a feeling, and I told my wife this when we were just like really depressed this last month, 2017 is going to be amazing because we are going to rise above all this negative noise, because this is what makes us strong. This is what makes people better.
So it makes people come together.
Makes people come together. We thrive in adversity. It's human nature. We don't need to be treated with kid gloves and become complacent. When things are too easy and good, we become soft and complacent. And so I have a feeling good things are going to happen because we don't have a choice. Kind of jumping off what you've exemplified in your life and how you've made positive from adversity. I think we all can do that. You know, non-drummers alike.
Anyone. even in your marriage.
Yes, you're right. Tell me about 2017. What's coming up with you guys?
Okay, so it's going to be really cool. We're doing like the first residency at the Ryman. So all year we'll be doing like a couple times a month, like a residency, and it'll be a different like thing each time, you know. So I think one of them we're gonna go over like the Wanderlust record, which is the Pharrell thing. So we'll do that, and we'll bring special guests in. The very first one in February will be our album release, which I'm super stoked about. I'm really proud of where we ended up, and so we'll do that and do a ton of just album promo stuff. So, and we have like an Australia trip planned. I think a UK trip. And just, you know, supporting the record. So I'm really excited. I've never been in a band, so I've never actually played parts live that I've created. So I'm really excited about it, and I just want to be sure to share those things, man, because a lot of times we think, you know, man, I'm working really hard, and one day, you know, everything's gonna blow, and I'll be able to like play on some records. Dude, it can happen in the snap of a finger. So be ready. Be ready, you know.
And you've been preparing for a long time.
Yeah.
Hubert, thank you so much for doing this.
Dude, thank you, man. I'm freaking honored to be here. I love the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to share this. Yeah.
That's awesome,
Thanks.
man.
Have a great day, man.
Dude, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so how cool is Hubert? His path is unique, and I found myself being very inspired by the things he's accomplished in the face of so much adversity. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Hubert is good people. My thanks, as always, goes to Mike Jackson for his technical help. Stay tuned next week for Zach Albeda's interview. In 2 weeks is our 100th episode. And what we've arranged is a roundtable discussion amongst a group of Nashville drummers that have a, I guess, lack of a better term, a support group amongst themselves. And our friend Kevin Murphy has assembled this and helped make this possible, this roundtable, and I appreciate him for that. All I can tell you is that we don't talk a lot of business. It just gets really crazy, and it's conversations not for the faint of hearted. Sometimes on the radio you might hear, if there are children in the room, you might send them in the other room. The conversation gets a little nutty and dark. But it's a lot of fun and a lot of laughing, and I'm excited to share it with you. And again, so much support over this last couple years, and I appreciate everyone's continuing to listen and support. And hope to see you around. Thanks. Bye-bye.